And I think that that tactile element, combined with the great creative that you guys do at McGregor Gordon, is really impactful and memorable. We talked about doing business together for 17 years. I think I've been involved in that for about 15. And I still remember my very first campaign.
Welcome to DirectWorks Let's Be Direct podcast number 3. Today's topic is DM in the B2B space. My name is Dan Schottlander, and we have Lane Gobeil, our Director of Product and Business Development, joining us, along with today's guest star, Gordon McGregor of McGregor Marketing. Welcome, Gordon.
Hi there.
Gordon, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And your business, and then we'll maybe use that as a segue into talking about more of the direct mail B2B space strategies and techniques.
Perfect. Be happy to. So my name's Gordon McGregor. I'm the principal of McGregor Marketing Communications. We're an agency that's been in business for about just over 20 years now. And we've had the privilege of working with a great team at DirectWorks for at least 17 years of those 20. We've been doing this for a long time. And it's funny because I remember when Lane started. So that's going back a little while. 20 years in business as an agency, and prior to that in a former life, I've had a lot of experience with direct mail and B2C and a little bit B2C, in business to business and as well as a little bit in business to consumer. And we have found over the years it to be a very useful tactic for us as one of many that we use when we're working with our clients to determine their campaigns. So that's us in a nutshell.
So you mentioned that you've used DM and B2B for a long time. Can you maybe talk a little bit about when you're thinking through your campaigns for your customers, what type of thought process are you going through, and when do you decide to integrate DM into a campaign, and how as well?
Sure. No, that's a good question. There's a few things that are really important for direct mail to really work well. You have to have a compelling offer. You have to have a good list. If you have those two things, that's about 80% of success right there. And then the other 20% is the part we focus on, which is the creative. We also like to have very nice creative. We have a few things that I can talk about with that in a little bit. But those three ingredients are really key. In terms of when do we use them, it really depends on the client that we're dealing with and the kind of product we're selling. Direct mail for us works in business to business with products that have high price points. It then makes reaching out and generating a response and feeding it back to the sales team worth the effort because these contacts aren't cheap. But the potential of converting a new customer in the business-to-business space is very valuable. So it's definitely it's a great return on investment when our clients go through with this tactic.
Yeah, we've seen some of the fantastic creative you've done over the years, very unique. And I think that's something that, in order to stand out nowadays, a lot of organizations in the marketing world are realizing that you have to do something different. You can't just be throwing a postcard out there. And of course, all the pieces, the offer, the call to action, the list, the creative, the timing, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're all very important. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the creative side. Sure. I think it's one of my favorite parts of the whole DM is how do we do great creative, right?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. That is the irony of what we do here, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, the creative is amazing; it looks fantastic," and it's true. Sometimes we do some really neat stuff, and we always strive to do the best we can with the budget that's available. The reality is that if you don't have a good list, it really doesn't work. It doesn't matter. So I have to admit that getting a good, solid list from wherever it may come from is really important. How we do that has changed over the years. You folks are great because I know that when I bring a list to you, you have all kinds of techniques to make that list and take it from the 10,000 names that I have to the 9,000 names that will actually work, which is always good for us. But to talk more about creative in terms of our process, what we typically do with any client, if we're working on a campaign, we need to understand their message, who they're trying to reach, and then decide if direct mail is the right way to do it, because not everyone can receive mail. So that's a key thing, especially with the pandemic. That got a little complicated. Business direct mail was a challenge in that period of time. And I've got a story about that in a little bit. But what we've also seen is that when it works, it's very effective. And from us, the creative must really resonate with the the message that we're trying to do. We need to create interest and entice people to open that piece of mail. One of the reasons why we always like doing grandiose envelopes is because even if they don't open the mail, that first envelope is an impression. That's like a billboard impression. And so I've reached them with a billboard right out of the gate, even if they never even open it.
Couldn't agree more.
They've interacted with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that envelope, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things I was going to mention, is that it seems to be part of your secret sauce.
Yes.
Is you recognize the importance of that first impression and standing out.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely. And then the format of the direct mail hasn't changed a lot. I think 50 years. I mean, longer than I've been doing this stuff. You've got the letter that sells, you've got the brochure that tells, you've got a response device. So those three things. Now, the type of things that we do with response devices has changed over the years. I don't know if you guys remember BRCs. There's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
You replace those in the modern age with things like QR codes and bring people to websites where we can harvest, get their information, and then take that warm lead, pass it off to sales. That's kind of how we do it today. But I think one of the key things too in the creative is to remember how to make each piece work. And that separation between the brochure telling and the letter selling is really important. You really need good sales copy in your letter, and you need to keep it brief. And then the brochure is there for people who really want to just kind of understand more about what they're buying or what they could potentially. That's to generate some interest if they aren't there yet. And that, again, is a great spot for great creative. And one of the nice things about direct mail that we don't have in other media, especially digital media, is the tactile piece. Like, we always do stuff that feels good. A soft touch AQ on the brochure, nice. And it feels good. We hand these things to people and they pull it out of the package and they're interacting with a physical object. And that is becoming more and more rare in today's digital world, which makes it really different, really attention.
Yeah, really exactly. Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the key advantages of direct mail, or rather, maybe not an advantage so much as it rounds out the brand offering and the branding exercise that direct mail can provide, right? I mean, when somebody's touching something, there's a ton of studies out there that show that, why, for an example of that would be, why have ebooks not taken off the way everybody predicted they would be over the last, because there's actually your nerve fingers and nerves in your fingers that touch the paper that help to reinforce, and the physical touch of the book. And it's the same. I think it's the same concept exactly.
And I think that that tactile element, combined with the great creative that you guys do at McGregor Gordon, is really impactful and memorable. We talked about doing business together for 17 years. I think I've been involved in that for about 15. And I still remember my very first campaign with McGregor Marketing. And I believe it was that the piece had a lot of different cows on it. Again, you had an envelope that really had that variable, that personalized piece, and I believe it was for a fertilization product at the time. So just off the cuff of my head here, remembering that going back 15 years, that still stands out in my memory as being impactful for me. So it really does resonate for a long time.
I'm glad you're remembering the creative and not the process of getting it through the direct process, because it was a little bit complicated. So
it was
on that project. The reason why it's fun to listen to somebody talk about something they did 15 years ago and go, I remember that. I don't have email with that kind of reaction. Okay.
No, but you never will. Yeah, somehow our banner ad or retargeting doesn't have the same. No, it just doesn't. No. Now, not to say that those other channels don't have value. The science is out. The statistics are there. It's well understood and known now that you can lift your response rates by using the combination of everything. Right. That's the key.
Today, what we recommend to clients is that, like, we'll go out with an e-blast campaign, we'll follow up with direct mail, we'll come back again with retargeting. So those kinds of things all work together, because you need different touch points from the brand to build that awareness and that interest. Just to briefly touch on the cows thing, because it is kind of a fun one to talk about. This goes back to creative, and so with that piece, we had just the maximum of regular letter size envelope, so we were right at the maximum size for regular mail, and we had a large window on one side that had a picture of a cow. And for the people in the lay public who aren't in agriculture, it's a cow, right? But for the audience that we were sending it to, who were all in farming, all cattle people, we had to send them the specific cow breed that they had, because the thing about any kind of direct mail is that it has to resonate with the person who receives it. And one of the neat things about working in direct is that you can do lots of variable stuff. So in this case, our variable piece of information was a cow. And we had different images of cows, different breeds of cows for different audiences. And then it goes back to the piece. Our list was the associations. The breed associations provided lists for each one of their associations. So we knew that the person who was getting the piece of direct mail was getting the one that had their cow on it. Now, they would open it just because they'd never seen a piece of direct mail with their cow on it. And that's the goal. Nailed it. That's how cows can help.
I love it. And that
15 years ago.
Yeah, you're singing my song. I love the way you guys have always embraced that variable imaging technology that's out there and that we have, and leverage that. It's one of the most important aspects of the creative, right? But moving on, I'd also like to touch. You touched on list, and I know that's a thing, and maybe you could walk through a little bit of how you've worked up some good lists and what the process is there, and how that might be different potentially from B to C.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's quite different from client to client. Even some clients come to us with very, very deeply detailed lists of their customer base. Those are great. They're bringing us data. Some of our clients are quite large and significant, and they have significant resources applied to knowing who their customers are. So those are great. In other circumstances, we need to be able to reach a specific select audience. And it's not as easy as it used to be. It used to be 20 years ago, you could go to a list broker and buy your list, and away you go. That obviously isn't how it works anymore. But they are out there. And if you are, if you apply yourself, you can find opportunities to work with various organizations and negotiate list rental. Sometimes the way we do it is we do it as a blind rental. And what that means is that we'll actually work with an organization and rent their list, but we never see it. And that's the nice thing about working with DirectWorks, actually, because you folks are bonded. So the person who's renting the list to us can send it to you. We never see it. We never touch it. And then you folks do the mail, and then you delete the list, and everyone's happy. Confidentiality is maintained. And it works really well with
that we do that a lot. We do a lot of work for insurance companies, and a lot of the times we're not allowed. There are different departments within the organization that are not allowed to see the list, although we're allowed to receive it. But you touch on a great point there as well. I wanted to drill into a little bit with respect to one of the advantages of the B2B side is that oftentimes you can get some pretty rich data to drive variables or drive messaging. And refine that list down and get the most relevant message on almost a one-to-one basis to your audience. List rental is certainly another way to do some great way to do some prospecting.
To expand on that point, we recently a project we did with you guys a couple of years ago, just as the pandemic was kicking off, actually, we did. For those in your audience that probably figured out we're focused on agriculture by now. So this one was for canola this was for soybean growers. And in this case, what we're doing is we're taking the client's list of their current growers, and they have different products that they grow. They have different languages that they're going to because they're working in Quebec and Ontario. They have different sales reps that they're for each zone. And we also are talking to people who are current growers and lapsed growers. And then on top of all that, we reached out and purchased a list of people that had never heard of this company before. So those are new potential opportunities. So that was a very complex multi-cell direct mail. And the benefit of that, the imagery resonates with the farmer. They get something, they see it, they see themselves, they open it up, it's great. But what was really important was making it specific and leveraging our customer data to be able to drive within the direct mail lots of variable information, because each one was specific to the rep with their phone number, the kinds of varieties the farmer could grow based on the heat zone that they were in, based on their geography. Like, it's complicated. And I'm sure that Lane picked up a few gray hairs just working on that one.
But these types of direct mail pieces we love. Like, and anytime I get a request from you, Gordon, you guys always try and do that extra, right? You're adding that personalization, as you were just talking about before, just to make that piece really relevant to your audience. And I think, again, that's part of what makes it really impactful is utilizing that database and mining that data to drive those variables to really give the consumer or the audience a really one-to-one personalized experience. And, I think that's why you guys have had so much success with it.
Well, no, thank you. And we do have success. One of the things I can talk about when I talk about success is I can't really talk about our clients so much, but I can certainly talk about myself. And what's interesting is that we do direct mail to support our own advertising agency and to reach out to people. And it was really challenging because we did this during the pandemic when no one was at their office. It turned out to be a little awkward. However, without getting into too much of the details of the campaign, we'd send mail out to people. And then 6 months would go by. And they finally would come back to the office. And they would go through 6 months worth of mail. And then they would call us. That's another thing that doesn't happen with a banner ad. I'm not disparaging digital at all because we use that a lot. But what's nice about direct mail is that its physicality, it's tangible, and it also has persistence. It's around for a while. So here somebody, she went through all of her mail, found our first brochure, kept on going, found her second, thought they were fantastic, called us, and asked us to do a Google Ads campaign.
Hey, who knows where it goes? But the point is that the direct mail got you in the door, right? And yeah, I love, and I absolutely agree. It's nothing has a staying power, the legs of direct mail, in the number of impressions either, right?
Yeah.
Banner ad, flash, gone. Sure.
Yeah, well, and that's the reality. Like we've done both. We've done digital for ourselves. We've done, and that's a great channel, and we spend money on that. We've done direct for ourselves. It's expensive. We know that because we buy our own. It's not cheap, but the value that it returns is impressive, and that's why we like it, because we do the mail, and the return certainly outstrips the cost.
So, Gord, if I'm hearing you correctly, there are really, if you're in the B2B space, there are really three principles. I think you've got to be, the advantage of B2B is that you can get this list, you can get this rich data, you can really do some great mining. So that's a huge advantage. The staying power, right, and the ability to make a relevant impression and take a message that is absolutely a one-to-one kind of approach.
Yes.
Right. And if you can combine those three, obviously, creative is a big piece of it. But if you can do creative that is extremely personalized, that makes a big difference. And then underlying all of that, of course, is timing and all those other more common sense things that are kind of universal for any marketing.
Well, and that's the thing with direct. Like if we can't put the person's name on the letter or on the envelope, then at that point we really start to question the value, because it has to be personal. It has to be personal. That's the whole point of mail. You're sending it to an individual.
Yeah, so especially in the business space, because that's what people don't have time, right? No, you're not selling pizzas here. Yeah,
that's not going to work for us.
Yes, it's a high value.
People, but it doesn't work for us.
Yeah, definitely a higher value. So I mean, for the average company who's looking to do something, a B2B potential customer of yours, what advice would you give them when they're thinking through their budgeting and timing, et cetera, resources?
Well, it's not something you can do with a small budget. Now, that means different things to different people. So it really depends on your situation. We work with medium to large size businesses, and that has sufficient budget to make a tactic like direct mail worthwhile. Okay, so that's part one, is can you afford it? And that question only can be answered by getting some estimates and getting some numbers and figuring out the cost. And the answer to that is different for different people. So that's part one. Part two is I keep going back to the list, but part two is the list. You do need a good list. If you don't have good data, you have to find it. And if you can't find it, then there are other tactics that might be useful in terms of building a list for the future use, right? So, yeah, you do have to kind of pick your battle with the data piece. The third thing, though, that I would say is that patience. And one of the things that's really important with direct mail is that you need to do it more than once. A lot of people think I'll send out a direct mail package and then judge the merits of this tactic based on one issue. Well, it doesn't work like that. You have to send it out more than one time, and you have to be patient. You have to be consistent. But it really does work if you wait.
Yeah, that's, if you think about it, almost any advertising medium, radio, television, all the traditionals, it's all about repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I think the formula is, you've got to have a product that you're selling that has pretty high value or good margin.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to get a hold of the right people and get in front of them. And if you've got the data that allows you to speak to them directly, right? And then you've got to make sure you've got the budget to really execute this and think of this as a long game, not a one and run type of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Gordon, I really appreciate your time. We're running out of some of that right now.
Okay.
But I mean, we could go on forever being direct mail geeks, the three of us. I hope that our audiences enjoyed and picked up a few pointers. And until next time, thank you very much, Gordon. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Well,
pleasure having you on.
Sorry.
No problem. Pleasure having you on.
I really appreciate your time, Dan, Lane. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
Right.
Thank you, Gordon. It's a pleasure.
All right.
Great.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.